Welcome to The Art Box, your podcast dedicated to exploring the vibrant art scene in Nevada and beyond. Join us as we embark on a journey through galleries, theaters, studios, public lands, and streetscapes, meeting the artists, curators, archaeologists, nature lovers, and cultural influencers who shape our creative community and our world. Whether you're looking for your next cultural adventure, seeking inspiration for your own artistic pursuits, or simply curious about the world of art, tune into The Art Box. Together, let's open up a world of creativity and imagination. Let's dive in.
Dreams, what if the night is about you and me? So lift your head.
There he is.
My goodness.
Daniel, how are you today and how's the weather? You're out in Colorado, right?
Yeah, it's cold. We're having a pretty good cold snap. It's sunny. It's just cold.
That's nice. You have snow on the ground?
Yeah. We had a pretty good snow last week, and then it snowed again kind of unexpectedly after that, and it's just been so cold. Normally, when it snows here, it's gone within a couple of days, but it's been so cold, it's been hanging around, so it's still fairly pretty.
Good.
Where do you live in Colorado?
Just in Denver.
Okay.
I'm right near Cherry Creek, so not downtown, but in Denver proper.
Okay.
Still.
Do you support your career totally through art? Or a lot of artists we talk to have another day job, but I know that you go around the country, probably the world, teaching workshops, right?
Yeah, so I've been able to build it up to a point. I've worked for myself since 1993 as a tattoo artist and had a worldwide kind of career, kind of high level of the industry career with that. I don't do it, I do it from time to time now, but it's not my main, most of my, just through painting sales and through the workshops and my online teaching platform has done pretty well to build a nice support base. So
That's wonderful, incredible. So you went to art school with the intention of becoming an illustrator.
Yeah, that was the initial inspiration or, drive of wanting to go to art school. The idea of finishing high school, I knew I didn't want to go, I was very much into a sort of counterculture part of life through skateboarding and music and stuff. And so I knew I wasn't going to follow a traditional plan of go to college, get a degree, get married, have kids, and kind of do that kind of thing. So I guess in high school, I had really gotten into drawing and I was good at art, but I wouldn't say I was exceptional. It wasn't like that was going to be my clear path or anything. And it just sort of ended up happening that way. But it was, I was really into illustration and the sort of the golden age illustrators, kind of early 20th century. And I was really into comic books. So I thought it was going to go into that direction for sure. As far as, the professional end of illustration and, even Time Magazine and things, they were starting to use digital art, which was really in its infancy, but was definitely taking hold of the industry at that time because it was the newest new cool thing, And I was much more motivated and interested in the more traditional look of things. So,
Where'd you grow up at?
Well, I'm from New Jersey. My dad was a pastor. He was a very outgoing, energetic, charismatic lover of God. His specialty was sort of going into these sort of inner city churches and kind of revitalizing the congregation base and things. And so he would kind of do these like 4-year contracts or 4-year commitments. So I lived in New Jersey until maybe like 1978 or so. And then we moved to Ohio, and I lived in Akron, Ohio for 4 years. And then we moved down to Youngstown, Ohio for 4 years. And I graduated high school and then moved to Connecticut. So that sort of was our move back to the East Coast. So when I had just graduated high school, we moved back to Connecticut, and that's where I decided to pursue art school. Was wishing I could go to SVA or Parsons or Pratt, and it just wasn't in the budget. So I went to another school that was a little more affordable in Greenwich. Sort of a weird product of both New Jersey and Ohio. So I'm really nice but aggressive at the same time.
I want to talk a little bit about your creative process because I was fortunate enough to be in your workshop and see it. But I remember that you would hold up maybe a photograph of what I thought could kind of be a boring scene. It was just maybe a ranch house that you could barely see in the distance. And you started looking at all the shapes. And I think that's what I learned the most from you in the workshop was look at a picture not as a ranch house in a meadow, but look at all the different shapes. And that was just so intriguing. Do you want to tell our listeners about your creative process?
Sure. The idea of what's become, well, and this is my viewpoint. I don't mean to disparage anyone's way of doing anything, so I'll just preface it with that, is I can only speak to what I know and what interests me creatively. There's been this move of people who only paint from photographs, people who only paint from photos they see online that are pretty pictures. And that's an avenue to explore creativity and do those things. But if you really want to create a piece of artwork, it's the reference again. It's an inspiration. It's not. You already have the picture. That's a beautiful finished thing, and you can't duplicate that. You can't compete with false reality. So the idea of what you see with your eyes is never what you're going to see in the photo. How many beautiful sunsets have you looked at and tried to take a picture of, and you're like, it doesn't do it justice. So that idea of, well, how can I create from a point of a false representation of what it is that you want to paint with a false expectation of being able to duplicate something so wonderful, but it's been digitized. It's a fake image. So that idea of, I call them fine art truths, and they're mediumless. It's the idea of composition, color theory, shape, edge quality, all those things that go into great works of art start at the beginning of the painting. And if you're trying to copy a picture and not sort of deconstructing it and not basically deconstructing what you're looking at and rebuilding it in the way that you translate it, the way you see it, so then it becomes inspiration, it becomes true reference, not a rule of what you're looking at. It's pretty foundational to what I do. And I would say, going back to my illustration background, and again, my heroes, the great illustrators, were fine art painters. They were not duplicators of things. And you can look at Norman Rockwell photographs of reference and then see paintings. And, he's kind of at the tail end of that. But, going earlier when the camera started to become a tool to use, they would, Dean Cornwell, who's one of my favorite, probably my most favorite illustrator, he would sketch out the pose of the model first. He would explore what he wanted to see. Then he would pose the model and photograph it and use that as reference. So, that idea of I'm taking this as a tool to use in what I'm doing, and then you're sort of putting things, together. So I'm dismantling whatever that reference is, and I'm putting it back together in a way that's pleasing compositionally, manipulating what I'm seeing in the tonal qualities of what might be there to either reinforce a feeling of depth and distance or mood or atmosphere. If you think of like who your favorite painter may be, and you want to paint like them, and you drive around looking to find that exact what were they looking at when they painted this, you're not going to see what's in the painting. That comes from somewhere else. That's basically my process in a nutshell, is thinking about the quality of light, what the mood is, does it fit with the subject, what's the story. If you don't internalize and make it mean something to you, it's not going to mean something to anyone else. And that's where straight duplication just, unless you're a really good photographer and you're out there finding your, that's a piece of it too, is I only work from my own reference, and what you were speaking to with the idea of, this is not a pretty picture to paint. Well, I want to make it a piece of art and just use the information that's in that reference to inform what it is I'm doing, About 10 minutes into the actual creation process, I'm barely looking at the reference because I'm doing what needs to be done for the painting. And I think that's where a little bit of the special sauce that makes someone's paintings better than someone else's, even if you're working in the same medium or thematically, it's something special that's personal has to come out of you and enter into that piece of art.
I found your workshop to be incredibly inspiring and also informative. In fact, I don't know if you remember, but I bought one of your paintings at the workshop, and it now is hanging right by my front door so everybody that comes in can see that.
Oh, cool.
First.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
I love the shapes, and I think about it every time I see that painting.
Cool. That's great. I like to make, I'm making a living, but when I do workshops, and I appreciate the time commitment, and not only the financial commitment of being there, but the time commitment of being there. So, I'm always really grateful when people take home demos or some of the things that I bring, and I try to make it a much more accessible to add to your collection. But it always means a lot to me when students go home with pieces of the experience that we created together, because anything I paint with a particular group, that was informed by the group also, it's depending on how I'm feeling with the group, how things are going, that really kind of changes the trajectory of either complexity or complication. It's such a fun process to teach in person also in that way.
And we so enjoyed that you did. I think there's so much more that a student can gain by buying an actual piece of art and studying it rather than looking at a picture of an artist's work.
Absolutely. I just went to the Denver Art Museum, which is right down the street. I realized I hadn't been there in probably a year, and I was just mesmerized and re-inspired. And there's things I'll see in books and think, it's not the same looking at your phone screen or your iPad, or I would even argue that like my library is extensive of art books and art reference books, and even looking at the printed page, I feel is so much better than looking at what happens on the digital screen. Oh geez, even if it's better in clarity, it has you can't beat an analog experience. You can't beat that idea of either seeing a painting in person, and I post all the time. I'm very active on Instagram and the things, and I do I have a big online platform of live and recorded classes and things, and people will come to the studio. They'll either be in town to visit. The nice thing about Denver is we get a lot of people coming through, so I get a lot of studio visits and things. They get an opportunity to see pieces in person that they've seen online, and they're like, oh my God, this is so much better. I'm like, yeah, I know. Anyway, I've been recently re-inspired by going, and there was a still life painting by William Merritt Chase. So there's a still life by William Merritt Chase. There was some fish in a brass bowl and things. So I was so excited to see that. I ran right home, ran over to Whole Foods, bought a Bronzini, and threw it on my still life table and painted this fish, and it was amazing. But I never would have probably done that if I hadn't gone and been inspired by what I saw in person of this painting. So it's important to get out, and there's talk about people are like, oh, what are some good watercolor galleries I can go to? Well, there aren't any, and like what are some local galleries I can go to? Well, we've got there's one gallery here in Denver that is very well recognized in sort of the realm of artwork that I'm interested in, as far as more representational or traditional painterly. Even their contemporary shows, they're still in a certain genre of painting that is what I like to see. I'm not going to just some random galleries with junk in them. It's the same thing of looking online. I want to look at the stuff that was inspiring people more than I want to see work that has been created from similar inspirations as me, if that makes sense. But
understand. There was a student in our class. He took some of your online classes, and we were amazed at how well he painted. Do you want to tell us where to find your online workshops?
Sure. So what's really I won't mention his name, but the student that you're referring to is he's done a lot of dedicated work in the pursuit of kind of growing his awareness of art and what's possible. And and I've worked with him in a workshop, and he's been to 2 in-person workshops, and he's done my 6-month atelier program, and then I have other recorded things on there. So at danmarshallart.com, you can find a wealth of information, and a lot of these. The one thing that I do, it's called a monthly masterclass, and every month there's either a topic of focus or a technique or a subject matter focus that we sort of peel back all the layers and deep dive into just this one thing. So if it's, for instance, on nautical subjects, so it dives into how to represent different types of boats quickly, like it goes into almost anatomy of the boat. And then it would go into, the idea of how do we capture these reflections, what kind of skies work with this, what kind of color palette. And it's like oftentimes 4 or 5 hours worth of information that culminates in taking all those pieces and then creating a finished painting from all that. I think I've got close to 30 different topics, and some of them are foundational as far as only dealing with composition or only dealing with design. And in those, there's always a lot of, there are no shortcuts in art, but I really try to point out the stones that aren't slippery, so it's this is the stepping stone, this is avoid that stone. So more of trying to inform people on what these are the common mistakes, and if so it's not a shortcut, but it can save some time in not going too far down the wrong path before you straighten your ship.
Understand.
But I really enjoy doing them, and I've got a great community on there that is supportive of each other, and a lot of them show up to the same things, or they might do an online thing and then pop up into one of my in-person workshops. And I'm going to Mexico next week for a workshop, and there's 3 of the students coming were in one of the online live programs, and they all decided, we got along on there. They're a couple, they've become girlfriends, so that's going to be an opportunity for them to be creative together, and we can be in person and kind of enjoy that experience.
Absolutely. Now, are these classes, are they live, or how does that work? Do they get recordings? What?
Online?
The online ones, yes.
Oh, yeah. So basically what happens is most of the content is produced during a live event. So like the monthly masterclass, it's a live interactive event, so people can jump in and ask questions. If they want me to clarify, I can clarify. But I'm creating everything in real time, in real life, well, real internet life. Mm-hmm. Because I also like to show that the proof is in the pudding. So if it's recorded content, that can be edited. It can be, if I mess up, I can do it again. So I enjoy the pressure of producing live in that way, to show that if you look at these things, it's a transparent view of my process and how I can make anything work, by sort of mastering these different ideas of working through the painting. And then they're resold as recorded replays. So if you attend the live, you get evergreen access to the recording. And then usually about a month after that live section, I then offer it up at a lower price point as just the recording that you can add to your library. So it's a member-based website. So there's no subscription fees or dues or anything. It's just as soon as you buy something, you become a member on the site, and then that gives you access to other things that are within the site that are member only access, and you get offers for discounts on things and stuff too. So it kind of creates a little bit of a community, and there's perks to being a member. That credit card commercial. So anyway.
Well, and that's a nice way to offer options to people who like to paint at home, or just don't have access to get to workshops.
Right. Because it is a a lot of time, especially like if it's a destination workshop, you're paying to get there, you're paying for the workshop, if there isn't housing with the workshop, you're paying for housing, all those things. So it can be a pretty good investment. And I really started doing that. I only started doing that. It was basically a survival. A means to survive in 2020, when we got locked down, and it was, I think I had 10 workshops scheduled that year, and everything got canceled. So that was my yearly income just went away instantly. So there was a shiny side of that coin of it spurred me into creating this online content and this online platform. And it's, I have a lot of people on there that aren't physically able to travel, or they have, family commitments and stuff, and they can still, like I said, it's if you can do both, it's great. But, the online stuff, you get a lot more kind of fleshed out information. The in-person things, it gets condensed a little bit, and I try to pack as much information as I can into each painting. But you also get the benefit of seeing how that pigment moves on the paper differently. You get to see into the palette. You get to experience those things that there's a clear views of that happening in the online content, but it's just not the same as getting flicked with paint if you're standing too close to me.
Okay.
I can verify to that because
Right.
there were so many in your class. It was so popular that we were all gathered around you, but you also had a video for people to see who were sitting back. So
is are these live classes something you really, really enjoy?
I do. When I started doing online stuff, I felt so disconnected from the people I was working with. Then there was that sort of brief pause before like the second lockdown, and so I was able to do an in-person workshop, and I was like, oh God, this is horrible. There's people here dealing with the in an in-person workshop. Everyone's got their personality there. Everyone's got a way that they carry themselves, and you don't really see that online. So I had kind of like, oh, I just want to go back to teaching online. And then I found the balance, and I really enjoy the quiet moments between when we're painting at an in-person workshop and getting to really kind of learn about people and connect and have that interaction is it's really important to me, those connections that we make in person. So I enjoy both aspects equally. But it was, it was a little culture shocky, only going online and then going back to in person. And then when I figured I was going to continue the online, I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually pretty nice, having this balance between in-person interaction and then just the sort of Zoom personas that people have. So
Zoom personas.
The online avatar version of people, and it's funny because, I do have online people that I have done in-person workshops with. So I feel like I have a more, there's definitely more of a connection because we've hung out, like we've been in a beautiful space together and created with each other. So, even though I'm leading a workshop or guiding people through it, that the energy that's created in the act of creation and being in that space with other people who are also in that creative space, I just find it so exciting, satisfying, and all the things that make life wonderful to be a part of.
So, Daniel, what's your studio like?
It's nice. I'm in a building that is it's sort of a double building, so there's a courtyard separating the two buildings. One wall is all windows, so I get a lot of natural light, and I get to see people walking by. It's not huge. It's probably 16 feet by 30 feet or so, but it's the perfect amount of space for me. And I have a lot of antiques, a lot of things I've collected. A lot of my library is here. I keep all of my artwork that I've collected in my apartment. So it's just all my artwork in here. So when people stop by, they don't say, "Oh, I really like that one," and then it's not mine. And I'm like, "No, you can't like that one. That's not mine." So it's very much a personal space filled with an aesthetic that I really like, and I've got dried flowers, I've got plants, I've got a collection of found bones and things that I pick up when I'm out painting in fields, and I've got gifts from people, and I'm really into these Spelter statues. They're sort of an iron, they're very big in sort of the Art Deco kind of. So I've got a really cool sculpture of Rembrandt in metal that is about these sort of French antiquities. So it's very warm, comforting space for me to be in.
That's the word I was going to say, comfortable then. So yeah. I noticed you said that I paint for myself. So does that rule out many commissions?
Oh, no. So there was part of that idea of I don't know if you want me to mix this into the idea of painting towards the market, or, painting, does that affect things or not? The commissions become I won't say they're not fun, but they're, you're instantly being directed what to paint. So there's my little bit of a problem with authority comes into play with that, in the sense of, well, I don't want to paint that. I want to paint what I want to paint. Just buy one of these ones I've already painted. But through the I'm in a gallery in California and a gallery in Breckenridge, and they funnel commissions through, and they charge a little bit more because there is a little bit more work that goes into it. You're not selecting the subject. So I do commissions. I'm very upfront at the onset of if it's something that I want to do or feel like I can execute in a manner that's up to my level of professionalism. I probably do. I don't have some people have a commission schedule where they'll accept commissions for the year or whatever. I get them kind of trickling in here and there, and I do. I probably do maybe 2 commissions every couple months that come in through the galleries, but I don't get a whole lot of outreach from my website or from social media about commissions, but I do through the galleries. So it's just another piece of the machine that keeps me from having to work at Trader Joe's or something like that.
Trader Joe's.
Daniel, what do you find as challenges for a professional artist like you? And what advice would you give to somebody who wants art as a career?
The biggest piece of advice that I would say is you got to find a way to diversify your income. So if you're purely relying on sales of paintings, it's a lot harder to find financial freedom in that way, unless you're going to be the flavor of the month at Art Basel. Again, there's different tiers of pockets and cliques and genres of being a professional artist. The biggest piece of advice I received fairly early on was to make sure to diversify what how you're earning with your art. My initial move to teach was a kind of a push from my mentor, who said, you should probably you should start teaching now. And I was like, really? Okay. How do I do that? So I had to learn. I had to learn how to communicate better. I had to learn how to. I wasn't a teacher. I'm a very natural sharer, but I did a lot of then kind of deep dive self-help study books on how to be a team leader, how to reading some business books on how to. I had been a retail manager when I was in art school, so I knew a little bit about that. But it was it became something I had to also learn to do, and getting recognition, whether it's through starting to enter local shows that can lead up into entering more national shows where you might get some recognition. The idea, I think that the main thing is to really be honest with where you're at in what you're producing, and really asking yourself, do I have a product to take to market? Have I developed enough to realistically make it in that way? And that's always a kind of interesting conversation. It's a deep thing. There's people that have books out and things of how to sell your art, and anyone can be a professional artist. Well, there's ways, but I mean, there's also be realistic. If you're not selling any paintings, are your paintings as good as they think they are? Or are they only good because Aunt Judy is telling you that's such a lovely painting, Daniel? Yeah, okay. Well, I'm still working on it. But that idea of, again, finding ways to diversify. So whether it's some ways of marketing your art, or I make plein air easels for watercolor, and then I've developed that. I started teaching workshops that turned into developing this online platform, and there's a lot of irons in the fire that I'm constantly turning, but it enables me to have a very livable income. I wouldn't say there's any kind of magic bullet, but it's also not as hard as it used to be, because you can directly interact with a lot of your collectors and find new collectors either through, Instagram or, manipulating those sort of social media avenues. Was probably initially a huge part of what enabled me to move into just, spending my time painting. So the advice is, first of all, be honest with yourself if you're at a level and producing sort of professional level work. Now, I can also say I have a really good friend who she's more into, I would call it like visionary art. It's kind of more, it's slightly abstract, psychedelic-y in a way, and there's a whole community that is into that. And to me, her artwork looks like kind of like high school level painting. And her price point is fairly low, but she sells enough of it to do these things. So she does different festivals and different fairs and stuff, and she sells pretty well. And I'm like, why? Like, to me, I don't get it. But that's, again, she's in a whole different arm of the art world than I'm in, and I respect her for what she does. And I'm just like, can I please talk to you about composition? But it doesn't have anything to do with what she does. So it's there are a lot of places, there's lots of room for everybody. So if you believe in what you're doing and you're doing it consistently, finding those things of either art fairs or local avenues, or I don't suggest walking into galleries with your work. That's not how you do it. But I think there's more to it. My personal belief is it has to be so soul gratifying, self-satisfying in what you're doing that the idea of making a career or selling art will come to you, but I feel like it's got to be coming from the right place in a lot of ways. So I don't know, that's weird. I get my opinions can kind of run all over the place, and I get a little circular with my conversation, so I apologize for that.
Don't apologize. I think that's good advice.
Daniel, if you could go back in time in the art world, where would you go and why?
I would probably go to about 1902, because a lot of the people that I like from the late 1800s would still be alive, and a lot of the people I like from the early 1900s would be just getting going, and I'd probably get to hang out with them. So Whistler and Sargent, like, those are my people. And then, as we move up closer to World War I and, getting into the American illustrators and Howard Pyle and N.C. Wyeth, and moving into Alan Tupper True, I really love. And he was a Colorado guy, and his still have murals in a lot of some of the banks and the courthouses and things out here. So that's the art that I love. Is there's a narrative to it. It's still rooted in classic ideas of composition and color, and it's basically, if you don't know how to draw, you're not my guy. So that's what it all boils down to. Is always the drawing and the ability to sort of communicate. Because art is communication. So I love those guys because that was how things were being communicated through artwork before photography became kind of a foothold in that whole kind of thing. So the imaginative qualities, again, it's going back to my process and my, part of what I'm really cluing into when I'm developing something is employing my imagination and not just a technician of trying to duplicate what I'm looking at. And that's is a huge part of the painters that I love. And, and that's before sci-fi and stuff. So, a lot of highly imaginative people now are producing things for movies or video games and stuff. And it's just not the aesthetic that as much as I like watching those things, as far as creating them artistically, it's not where my heart or mind is at. But I just think it's there's, again, I like the clothes. I like the antiques. They wouldn't be antiques at the time, but just the idea of there was a lot of beauty put into everyday tools of life, and the idea of craftsmanship and the idea of living life with beautiful accoutrement is something I'm very much into. So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, that was a good answer, and it takes me back. I mean, I can see going into these beautiful old buildings with amazing murals.
Yeah,
or in a bank, and I could sit there and look at them forever.
Yeah, as the world changes and things change, I would also love to be able to go to Morocco in the 1960s, or go to California in the late 50s and early 60s. So partially some of those things are products of my absorbed information from movies or whatnot. But there's just I'm really big on aesthetics of certain things. This sort of idea of elegance and class in everyday life that I can never live up to those things for myself, but I can like them, and I can try every now and again I'm going to put on a nicer pair of shoes today because I'm fancy,
There you go. Daniel, you mentioned drawing, and I have to ask you because in the workshop, you suggested a great drawing book, and I wrote it down, and now I can't find my notes on that. Do you remember the name of the book or the author?
I do. I actually have it sitting right here. And it's called Sketching from Square One to Trafalgar Square.
Oh, okay.
And the author is Richard E. Scott. His method of drawing and his sort of reasons of approach and process align exactly with what I talk about and the sort of the process I use. So it's a wonderful book, and it's if you're into urban sketching, a lot of what he does applies to what I do with watercolor, but it's also, if you want to get into that idea of doing, ink drawings that you're putting washes on top of, and, in the whole urban sketching movement and things, it aligns with that really well also. So it's just a very useful book, and it's fairly new. I think it just came out. I guess it was printed in 2013. I thought it was newer than that, but it's pretty new. So.
All right. Thank you. Daniel, what future projects or workshops do you have upcoming?
Every year I think, this is going to be an exciting year, and I'm not going to top that. And this year has presented some really exciting things. Well, the first thing, in January, February, when it's a little cold for me to go out and plein air paint here in Colorado, I usually start the year off with doing something that really stretches me or is more outside of my normal realm of things. And I got this roll of watercolor paper that's 60 inches by 10 yards. I'm starting the year off with doing a series of really large scale watercolors. I did a 2 foot by 4 foot. I've got a 38 by 38 on the board ready to go. So that's, I like to start the year off by really kind of pushing myself into a realm that I'm not comfortable. And watercolor is not really designed to work on a large scale, but I'm trying to make it happen. So that's keeping me motivated at the beginning of the year. My workshop schedule this year is, you can see that also at danmarshallart.com. But I've got trips to Mexico next week. I'll be doing a workshop in Iceland. I'm doing one out in Carmel. I've got one out in Georgia at the Booth Western Museum. I've got a couple other things, and New Jersey. So I have a friend that has an art school that she has out in Bedminster area of New Jersey, kind of central North New Jersey. And I do a couple. I usually do 2 or 3 workshops out there a year. So it's one of my favorites because actually growing up, my uncle has a farm that's about 15 minutes away from there, so I get to go see this old farm that I get to milk my first cow at and stuff. The workshop schedule is really exciting, and there's an organization that manages and protects Catalina Island called the Catalina Island Conservancy, and they have something called the Wild Side Show. I was fortunate to meet one of the family members that kind of manage that. They kind of rotate a schedule of artists every year to get to go out to the island and access parts of Catalina Island that is not open to the public. You basically have the rest of the year to create a body of work. There's a sale in October. I think there's 10 artists. I think the artists produce about 10 pieces each. That's a mix of studio and plein air work to support the conservancy efforts of Catalina Island. That's been on my radar, and sort of like a lot of my friends have done that, and I'm like, am I ever going to get a chance to do that? And this is my first year to be able to do that. So that's a big exciting thing for me this year. A couple plein air events. I'll do one in Balboa Island and one in Snowmass. I had done the Laguna Plein Air Painters Association Invitational the past 8 years, and this last year I took the year off, so I'm hoping to have the opportunity to kind of go back. And last thing, real quick, so I'm doing this river cruise that starts in Budapest and finishes up in Germany, and so it's a Danube river cruise, and there's going to be, I think, 6 of us kind of professional watercolorists. The cruise company kind of gave us the whole boat to book, so each of the 6 artists, was responsible for booking their share of cabins, and we ended up selling it out almost immediately. That'll be this 11-day riverboat cruise down the Danube, with stops in Vienna and Salzburg, and it's going to be that's sort of the end of my year. That happens at the end of September, and that's going to be a good capper to all the other fun stuff happening. But that'll be the first time I'm doing that. That'll be a really unique experience. I think.
Good time of year to be there too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't been back to Italy since COVID, so I love Italy in September, so I may try and go out and spend some just personal painting time in Italy. We'll see. But I'm so fortunate to have the opportunity to travel because of my art and be able to interact with people all over the place and get to make new connections. And it's kind of the second time I get to do this, because I was with tattooing. I was working in Japan, Germany, London, Italy, France. I've been tattooing about 30 years, but for the first 20 years when I was only tattooing, I was having kind of these similar experiences, and I'm now I get to do it again and just enjoy the places a lot more, because you're not just inside tattooing. I can be out in the streets painting and experiencing it in a whole different way. So.
You mean there's not plein air tattooing?
No. I've seen some people try, but it's not a good idea.
I think it's interesting that you have, and like I told you, the young girl that we interviewed who did my tattoo, I can hardly wait for her to hear this, because this will be so inspirational to her.
Well, good. It's when I started tattooing, that was what I was doing. That was my creative output. Again, it was pre-digital, so everything I was drawing everything. I was, it was a little bit of a different. It's a completely different industry now, but it was much more magical, and it was smaller. It was a lot smaller. So, but the opportunities that tattooing afforded me, and then what it ultimately led to me down into a path of fine art that I wouldn't have been able to. I'm so grateful for the opportunities and the shops that I got to work with. I have a very good pedigree that wouldn't mean anything now to people who have been tattooing in the past probably 5 years, but I'm grateful for what the tattoo industry gave me, and I still tattoo. Just I'm disconnected from the sort of industry in that way, but I still love it. And I love painting, and I'm so happy to be able to live a creative life, enjoy the struggles and challenges with that, but also the benefits and the payoffs. So the commitment and the hard work is it's forever.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful that you've had a life of creativity.
It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I've probably made questionable choices that ended up being good choices for a very, very sort of edifying, satisfying quality of life, even if that doesn't mean that I have an 8-room mansion. I'm happy that my creativity sustains me, and that people give me the opportunity to do things like your podcast and to go and teach workshops. It's a wonderful way to spend your days. That's for sure.
Well, if you had the 8-room mansion, you'd have to clean it. So
I know. I certainly wouldn't be able to hire a cleaner.
Well, maybe you would, so maybe I'm wrong about that, but yeah.
No,
Daniel, we want to thank you for spending time with us today. We sure learned a lot, didn't we, Steve?
Yes, we did.
And
yeah, this has been just joyous, and I knew this was going to be good when we exchanged some emails the other day, and you're very lighthearted, so it's like,
I'm still waiting for that chopper to come. I'm still looking.
Oh yeah, well, I told him, Linda, that if he wanted to come here, that we'd send the Art Box chopper out.
Okay.
It was going to come, but it would have a tough time getting over Mount Evans right now. So
right. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad we got to nail this down finally and get the time together.
We're also glad.
Yep, I was going
to say. I
say.
hope to see you in your neck of the woods sometime.
Yeah. Daniel, thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye now.
All right, Steve. Thanks, Linda. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Broadcasting from the Mesquite Works Steam Center in the scenic Mojave Desert, the Art Box sponsors thank you for listening. You can find us on Spotify, Samsung, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and Amazon Music. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We are on Facebook and Instagram as The Art Box. We welcome all comments. You can email us at artboxvv@gmail.com. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of its hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors.
Then I see the way you move.